The story begins with a boy named Rakuro as he defeats an enormous boss monster. The sky's clear and the Princess Feria praises him, but he suddenly jumps into the air, smashing her in the face and telling her that she can also go to hell. The credits roll and we see he was playing a VR game called Feria Chronicle. Rakuro celebrates his victory, and we learn that he's a guy who only likes to play trash games. VR games are the most common games now, but there were a ton of games that were made while the technology was developing, and many turned out to be trash. Rakuro gets some fresh air, and he feels like a convict who's finally free after clearing the game, but he wonders what he should play next. At school, we see a girl named Rei practicing how to talk to Rakuro. She waits for him to walk past, but one of his friends gets to him first, and she gets left behind. At the local game shop, the owner Mana is excited for the summer break, hoping it will bring a boost to her business. Rei visits the shop, but Mana tells her that Rakuro isn't there. Rei gets embarrassed and tells Mana that she's just there to look at the games and nothing else. But Mana knows her secret and tells her that Rakuro hasn't been there in a while because he's been busy trying to crack an extra special trash game. She explains that the game is infamous because of its terrible AI, insane enemy attack patterns, as well as being filled with bugs. Most players rage quit on just the first boss, and she notes that the final boss must be cleared in a mask and shorts. As the two are talking, Rakuro walks into the store, asking if there are any new games for him, and suddenly Rei disappears. Mana is surprised he already beat the game, and he starts telling her about it, saying that the princess was the source of all his problems. She would constantly cause chaos and get his party members killed, and if he ever tried to confront her, she would just refuse to move, and he would become stuck for hours. Mana can't believe he didn't give up, but Rakuro notes that in the final 3 minutes of the game after defeating the final boss, he's free to beat the crap out of her without getting into trouble, saying it was all worth it in the end. He wonders what he can play next to get the same high, but Mana suggests that he should try playing a game that isn't trash for once, telling him to try Shangri-La Frontier, also known as SLF, the most popular VR MMO, with over 30 million players. He isn't sure about it at first, but Mana tells him he needs to experience what a good game is like, so he can better appreciate his trash games. Rakuro decides to check it out, and we learn that the game is considered God tier. It's made by the Utopia Entertainment software company, which was founded by the genius programmer Tsukuyo Tsukuri, so Rakuro has high hopes for the game. As soon as he starts the game, Rakuro's first task is to create a character and pick a job. He picks the Twin Blade Mercenary for its flexibility, and he chooses Wanderer as his origin, which gives him a bonus to his luck. He starts to customize his character, and he is surprised to find so many options. He gets excited and decides to go hardcore on his character design. Rakuro ends up making his character wear a bird mask, so he could hide his face since he's half naked. In this game, weapons are expensive, but it's possible to sell the starter equipment to make a profit. He names his character Sanraku, and he finally starts playing the game. He instantly skips the prologue and jumps straight into playing the game. He opens his eyes in a forest, and he is instantly impressed, because it feels as if he's moving in real life. He runs and climbs up a tree in order to test his character's agility, and he can finally feel the difference between this game and a trash game like Feria. Rakuro opens his map and he wonders why he didn't start at a tutorial town to begin with. It turns out that those who choose Wanderer as their origin start at a random location in the starting zone. He decides to head to the starting town, and he checks his stats along the way. He realizes he has low defense since he has no armor, but hopes his high luck stat will make up for it. He is suddenly attacked by a goblin, so he summons his twin blades to fight. The goblin charges at him, but he defeats it without breaking a sweat. He levels up to level 2, and he gets his hands on the goblin's axe. He gets distracted by something behind the bushes, and a monster bunny suddenly tries to attack him. The attack just misses, and it destroys the tree behind him. Rakuro thinks he would have died if he got hit, and the bunny attacks him again, but he manages to block it and even land a critical hit. The bunny doesn't give up, but Rakuro isn't impressed, because it's only aiming for his neck, which makes it too easy to predict. Rakuro levels up straight to level 4, and he learns the flash counter skill. He continues fighting other monsters in the forest, and after farming the bunnies for over 2 hours, he manages to obtain 2 of their swords. He ends up reaching level 12, and he puts most of his points into luck. He realizes he can't level up anymore in this area, so he decides to head over to the second town. As he heads over, he reaches a bridge he must cross, but it's guarded by a giant serpent boss. The game suggests that he fight it with a party of 3, but Rakuro just charges in. Meanwhile, in the starting town, the people are amazed when they see a knight wearing super high-level armor. The people wonder why someone so high-level is in the town, and we hear from her voice that she's a girl. She's there looking for Rakuro, but she doesn't see anyone with his name, which she finds strange, because all new players should start in that town. When she logs out, we see that it was Rei that was looking for him, and she's disappointed she couldn't find him. Back with Rakuro, he rushes at the snake. He decides to watch its attack patterns and just dodge to begin with. He realizes that its movements are pretty easy to read because it's just a starting boss. He thinks he can defeat it without taking a single hit, but when he tries to attack it, his blade is broken. He brings out his 2 special Vorpal blades, but when he tries to attack, it shoots venom at him. When he checks his status, Rakuro learns that he's been poisoned and will take a point of damage every 10 seconds. He realizes that he only has about 4 minutes to beat the boss, so he thinks he'll need to rely on his critical hits. He has learned that in this game, criticals aren't just random, but are triggered when an attack lands in an ideal way or hits an enemy's weak point. Rakuro determines that the snake's weak point is its head, but he finds it hard to land a hit on it. He changes up his attack, using his screw pierce skill on its body. He attacks the wound that he made, and he's able to trigger his critical hits. He keeps slashing, but he doesn't really know if he can beat it, because he doesn't even know how much HP it has. But he ends up landing a hit on the boss's eye, and he takes it out. Before he can check out his loot, he realizes he's still taking damage from the poison, so he rushes toward the town to look for an antidote. Meanwhile at the town, there are 2 players, Reiji and Mia, that are just outside. Reiji is glad that he's finally playing the game with his crush after 3 months of trying, but they see Rakuro running towards them, and Mia gets ready to attack him thinking he's a monster. Reiji points out that he has a name, so he must be a player, and he realizes that Rakuro must have been hit by the serpent's poison, so he points out the inn, where Rakuro can register his respawn point, but he must do it by getting into the bed. Rakuro reaches the inn just in time, but the innkeeper casually tells him about their amenities. Rakuro tells her to skip all the details, and he quickly tries to rent a room. He dives into his room, and he manages to register his respawn point, but he still ends up dying to the poison. He takes a break from the game, but he takes a moment to appreciate how good the game is. When he gets back in the game, he starts exploring the town, looking for a shop where he can buy maps and recovery items. He thinks about getting a new weapon to replace his twin blades, but he soon realizes that the people are staring at him since he's half naked, so he buys the cheapest set of clothes he can find, just to avoid people staring at him. He then visits a weapon shop, but finds that his Vorpal blades are better than anything in the shop. The shopkeeper tells him that he can make him a better weapon, but he will need to find the materials. Rakuro immediately goes mining for ore in a muddy swamp, but becomes frustrated when he only gets 2 out of the 5 ores he needed, after trying for 30 minutes. A mud frog appears, and it annoys him as it splashes around, getting mud on him. Rakuro knows that it's resistant to slashing damage, since his clothes are made from its skin, so he switches to his goblin axe, and he takes it out. After a few hours, Rakuro returns to the shop with all the materials for his new weapon. The man points out that he found a rare marsh fossil, and it can be used to make a rare dagger. Rakuro likes the idea, and leaves the task to the owner. Rakuro is excited as he checks out his new weapons, and the shopkeeper tells him that he can also upgrade the weapons, so he should come back when he has more materials. The man goes on to warn Rakuro about the monsters that come out during the night, suggesting he should get some better armor, but he just thinks it's the perfect chance to test out his new weapons. Meanwhile, Rei defeats the serpent boss with a single slash, and we learn she has searched the entire starting area for Rakuro, so she decides to check the second town. We see Rakuro fighting against a red-capped goblin, and he struggles against it, as it's not like any other goblin that he's fought before. The goblin calls for its friends, and Rakuro becomes surrounded. The goblins lunge at him, but there's suddenly a huge attack that wipes them all out, and an enormous wolf monster emerges. It's identified as a unique monster known as the Night Slayer, and Rakuro realizes that there's more to this game than he thought. Meanwhile, we see Rei as she meets Reiji and Mia, and they tell her about their encounter with Rakuro. Mia wants to attack her since she looks scary, but Reiji tells her she's also a player. Reiji describes Rakuro's character to Rei, and he tells her how he was poisoned, so he ran straight into the town. Rei is impressed by how he was able to beat the boss without even visiting the first town. She gives the couple an item for their help, and she dashes off in an instant. Mia is impressed by her speed, and Reiji recognizes the crest on her back as the guild which specifically hunts the Night Slayer unique monster. He notes that there are said to be 7 unique monsters in the game, but it's unclear when these monsters appear, which led to many of the top players forming guilds to hunt them. Mia thinks they are just rare monsters, but Reiji notes they are insanely strong, and that even after a year of the game being released, and with over 30 million players, not a single unique monster has ever been defeated. We see Rakuro as he faces the Night Slayer. He knows he will die if he takes a single hit, but he manages to parry the monster's attack. He starts sweating thinking how close it was, but he's glad he learned the perfect parry skill while he was grinding. He switches to his Vorpal blades, which deal bonus critical damage, and he starts to counterattack. But the clouds cover the moonlight, and the wolf seems to disappear. The wolf lunges out at him, but he dodges all of its attacks. The wolf disappears once again, and Rakuro tries to predict where it will appear from. He manages to parry its attack, but he finds that its fur is even tougher than the scales of the serpent boss. After fighting and landing over 200 critical hits, Rakuro doesn't feel like he has done any damage at all. His weapons are on the verge of breaking, and he thinks it's impossible for him to win, but this just makes him enjoy the game even more. He tries to land an attack on the wolf's eye, but he ends up getting pushed away. The Night Slayer suddenly howls, and it seems to paralyze Rakuro's body. It disappears once again, and in an instant, Rakuro has his legs cut off. He has 1 HP left, but he thinks that it's all over for him. He thinks about how insanely strong the wolf is, but thinks its strength is just part of its programming, so there must be a way to defeat it. He decides that instead of clearing the game, he will find a way to defeat it no matter what it takes. Rakuro respawns at the inn, and he finds he has been cursed by the Night Slayer's mark. He finds that his body has been marked, and he's no longer able to equip items on his torso or legs. He thinks he's screwed, and he finds that the curse can only be removed by defeating the wolf. As he walks through the town, he starts thinking the game is trash, but he thinks about all the other trash games he's beaten, so he refuses to let this get the better of him. He checks his status, and finds that from just fighting the unique monster, he was able to level up to 28. He allocates his stat points, but realizes he has completely neglected his vitality stat, so he thinks he's a complete glass cannon, and with 2 of his armor slots sealed, he thinks he's doomed. He wishes that his high luck stat would give him good luck, and at that moment, a bunny suddenly bounces on his head. The bunny waves at him, so he starts chasing after it. Rakuro thinks it must be some kind of event where he can get a free item by catching it. He corners it in a dead end, but the bunny suddenly summons a door. The bunny gets away, and when Rakuro approaches the door, he finds that it's a unique scenario invitation from the Rabbit Country. Rakuro remembers reading about this online, that besides the main quest of the game, there are countless side quests, some of which come in the form of unique scenarios, but it's not clear how they are triggered. However, they are said to provide some of the best rewards, so there are even guilds which try to hunt for them. Rakuro gets excited thinking his luck is finally paying off, and we see he has entered a world filled with rabbits. The bunny from earlier welcomes him, introducing herself as Emil, and Rakuro is shocked that it can speak. She tells Rakuro that everyone has been talking about him, because he took on the Night Slayer by himself even though he was so weak. Rakuro thinks he didn't stand a chance, but Emil notes that the marking on his body is proof that the Night Slayer acknowledged him. Rakuro wonders if Emil really is an NPC since she talks so much, but he remembers that the curse mark also gives him bonus dialogue options. Emil starts leading him to meet her boss, and Rakuro worries they might want revenge since he hunted so many bunnies in the beginning, but Emil tells him not to worry. Emil brings him to the rabbit palace, and she tells him that he's the first person to ever visit. Rakuro gets excited hearing this, and he thinks his luck is finally turning around. He thinks he'll be able to get a unique reward, but his attitude completely changes as he comes face to face with the Rabbit King. Meanwhile, at the game shop, Rei gets caught sneaking around, but Mana tells her that Rakuro isn't there. She thinks that since it's summer break, he would probably be spending all his time in the game. Rei mentions how she still hasn't been able to find him, but Mana tells her not to give up. At Rakuro's house, his sister Rumi heads out, while Rakuro looks up the forums about other people who have been to the Rabbit Country. He finds that they all just followed a quest to fight a snake boss, but no one has ever mentioned meeting the Rabbit King, so he thinks he has found something special. He thinks back to his meeting with the king, who introduces himself as Vash. He admires Rakuro's Vorpal soul, but Rakuro isn't sure what that means. The king offers to get him up to snuff, and Rakuro realizes it's a training quest. He immediately accepts, even calling the king his bro, but Vash starts to approach him menacingly. Rakuro thinks he said the wrong thing, but Vash actually takes a liking to him, and he orders Emil to take care of him. Emil is excited to show him around, but Rakuro says he's been playing for a while so he needs to take a break. As Vash is leaving, he gives Rakuro a collar which automatically equips. Upon examining the item, the collar seems to reduce his experience by half, but it over doubles his stat points that he gets from leveling up. Rakuro tries to take it off, but Vash says it's impossible unless he allows it, saying hardship is necessary to get stronger. But Rakuro can't believe he has been given yet another restriction. As he thinks about the item, he realizes it's actually pretty overpowered. He realizes the time, and he remembers he had an appointment with his friend. He loads up a fighting game called Berserk Online, and we learn it was a trash game that he was once really into. He meets up with his friend Katsuo, and they prepare to have a match. Katsuo shows off his new glitch arm attack, but Rakuro counters with his quick fist technique, blocking all of his friend's attacks. It looks like Rakuro has the upper hand, but thanks to a texture glitch with his fist, Katsuo lands a hit on him, and he loses the fight. Rakuro notes how he's only been fighting NPCs lately, so he's glad he got a chance to PvP with him. Katsuo can't believe he is really playing SLF, but Rakuro admits he's been having fun with it, mentioning the 7 unique monsters that no one has been able to defeat, and he doesn't plan on giving up until he beats the wolf. Katsuo becomes interested, thinking he might try the game out as well, and he mentions how he even emailed their mutual friend about it. We see a girl named Asha as she receives the message. She's surprised to learn Rakuro has started playing the game, but she continues cutting down some other players. We see she's a player killer at level 99, and she thinks about paying Rakuro a visit. When Rakuro gets back into the game, he tells Emil he wants to get to the 3rd town before he spends more time in the Rabbit Kingdom. He notes that since it's summer break, there are a lot of new players, so he wants to get ahead so he doesn't get stuck competing for resources. Emil doesn't really know what he's talking about, but offers to help him out and join his party. As they prepare to head off, they are noticed by 2 girls who find Emil cute, and they wonder how it's possible to have a bunny as a pet. Rakuro wants to keep his scenario a secret, so he quickly runs away, but one of the girls takes a picture, planning to ask about it on the forum. They get outside the town, but there is suddenly a monster that comes charging at them. However, as it gets closer, it notices the markings on Rakuro's body, and it immediately runs away instead. Rakuro goes after it, chasing it into a wall, and as it tries to change direction, he predicts its movements, and he finishes it off. Emil compliments him, wondering what they should do next, and Rakuro decides to skip through and head straight to the next boss. He asks Emil if she has any information about the boss, and she reveals it's a creature known as the Mud Digger. Rakuro realizes he's in trouble hearing the name, and they end up in an area completely covered with a swamp. The mud makes it almost impossible to move properly, but it's too late to change his plan, as the enormous Mud Digger suddenly appears. Rakuro wonders how he will be able to fight it without his speed. The beast dives into the mud and starts approaching them, but thanks to learning some new skills after fighting the Night Slayer, he uses his evade to slide out of the way. The boss lunges at him, but he manages to stop it, and using his upgraded parry skill, he lands a hit with his repel counter. However, his skills have a cooldown, and the boss lunges at him once again, and he doesn't know what to do. But Emil suddenly takes out a book, launching a magic blade that connects with the boss. Rakuro realizes he doesn't have to fight alone, and he tries to attack while the boss is down, but the mud slows him down. The boss gets back up, but Rakuro lands an attack with his skill and knocks it back. He jumps up, telling Emil to attack with her spell, and she launches another magic blade. The boss seems to be defeated, and Rakuro falls down, taking some fall damage. He compliments Emil on her attack, but he suddenly notices that the boss is gone. The ground starts to shake, and the mud seems like it's pulling him in, so he quickly grabs Emil and throws her away. The boss reemerges, and Rakuro gets thrown into the air. We learn that this is the second phase of the boss, and Rakuro realizes it's trying to take him out with fall damage. He curses whoever designed the fight, because it's a mechanic that couldn't be dodged. He thinks it's all over for him, but Emil suddenly rushes over with a scroll which teleports them. They reappear above the boss, and using the momentum from his fall, he triggers an attack skill known as Meteor Fall, slamming into the boss and defeating it. Rakuro survives with just 1 HP, and he levels up to 29. As they continue to the next area, he eats some herbs to recover some of his HP, and Emil gets excited about getting to the next town. Rakuro wonders how to hide her so they don't cause another scene, so Emil shows him her secret bracelet, which she uses and allows her to transform into a girl. Rakuro is stunned by the transformation, but Emil soon returns to her bunny form, telling him that it's exhausting for her to transform, and she can only last for about 5 minutes. They make it to the third town, but when they get to the gate, the guards wonder why he is half naked. They notice the markings on his body, but Emil suddenly makes up a wild story about him being a great warrior who was reborn. They attract the attention of the other players, but there are some who give Rakuro a strange look. They are allowed into the town, but Rakuro is suddenly grabbed by a girl named Animalia, and she seems to recognize him, but he has no idea who she is. We see that a few hours earlier, after Rakuro ran away from the two girls, one of them posted his picture on the forum, asking how it's possible to tame a talking bunny. Some of the players mock him for his outfit, but when Animalia notices the post, she thinks it's a cheat, since only cats and dogs can be tamed as pets in the game. We learn she's an animal lover, and she immediately heads off to find Rakuro. Other players notice the markings on his body, and some of the more advanced players recognize it as the Night Slayer's markings. While it's not rare for new players to encounter the Night Slayer, there are people who wonder how he got the curse. This even attracts the attention of a player known as Orcelot, the leader of the biggest player-killer clan. The rumors continue to spread, and it seems there is quite the spotlight on Rakuro. Animalia begs to learn how he tamed a Vorpal bunny, but he refuses to reveal his secret. He pretends to not know what she's talking about, but they are suddenly attacked by a masked player, who tells him that it's better to share. Rakuro recognizes them as the Pencil Knight, but she removes her mask, telling him she goes by Asha. Rakuro recalls that they used to play the trash game called Unite Rounds, where we see players robbing a shop, taking all the items inside, but as they leave, they encounter Rakuro, who steals everything from them. We learn that the players were supposed to work together to protect the kingdom from the monsters. But because of the extremely low drop rate, the players struggled to make progress, so they decided to rob each other, because it's far more efficient than grinding. Asha rose to power, and she took control of the kingdom, manipulating the players to do her bidding. We see Rakuro and Katsu in her castle, as they prepare to fight Asha, because she is abusing the players in the game, so they want to put an end to her reign of terror. They see her in the throne room, and they prepare to take her on, as she tells them that she is the game's final boss. We return to SLF, as Rakuro reveals that their fight in Unite Rounds ended in a draw. He sees that Asha is at level 99, noting that he isn't even close to her level, so he knows that he's at a disadvantage. She charges at him, throwing poison knives, but he avoids them, and she is impressed that he is able to survive, considering that he is still at level 29. He tells her that he has the skills to make up for his low level, and Animalia recognizes Asha, revealing that she is the vice leader of the player-killer clan, Ashurakai. She reveals that she has a reputation for defeating high-level players, so the players call her the Giant Killer, but Rakuro recalls that she was the giant who got herself killed in Unite Rounds. She laughs it off, but she starts attacking him, and they exchange blows, as she reveals that the leader of Ashurikai ordered her to gather information about the unique scenario involving the bunny. As their fight continues, he realizes that he can't defeat her, because her level is too high, but he notices that she is keeping him away from the gate, thinking she is trying to stay away from the other players. She confirms this, but she tells him that he will never reach the gate. Animalia wants to know about the Vorpal bunny, thinking Emil must know something, so she approaches Emil, but her transformation wears off, returning her to her bunny form. Animalia goes wild, and seeing this, Rakuro comes up with a plan. He kicks Asha away, knowing she is going easy on him, and Emil jumps to him as he starts running for the gate. Asha chases after them, but she is stopped by an explosion as Animalia blocks her path, saying she won't let Asha put the bunny in danger. Rakuro is about to reach the gate, but Asha's clanmates get in the way, revealing that they have orders to hunt him down. They charge at him, and he struggles to dodge their attacks, as he notes that they are far stronger than him. Animalia uses her curse spells, releasing magic beams, but Asha absorbs the attack, and reflects it at Animalia, knocking her down. She receives 5 debuffs, as Asha reveals that she is holding an item, which reflects spells, saying she would have been in trouble without it. Rakuro continues to struggle against the player killers, as he wonders how he can defeat them because they are too strong for him. But Rei suddenly arrives, launching a powerful strike, which smashes the ground, killing one of the players instantly. The player killers recognize her as the attack master, and she recognizes Rakuro's character, so she becomes overjoyed, because she is finally able to find him. We learn that Mana told Rei that Rakuro is playing his son Raku, and she encouraged Rei to continue searching for him, so that she can tell him how she feels. She returns to her house, where we see trash games in her room, revealing that she tried to play them, but she didn't like any of them. She thinks that SLF is her only chance to get closer to Rakuro, so she is determined to find him there. She logs into the game, and she receives a message from her sister, telling her to find a certain player, because her sister wants to talk to him. The message reveals the location of the player, and it even has a picture of him, revealing that the player's name is Son Raku. She makes her way to the location, and she uses super speed, allowing her to travel with haste. She sees Rakuro being attacked by the player killers, thinking this is her chance to talk to him, so she leaps forward, and launches a devastating attack. The impact grabs Asha's attention, thinking the player killers are having a hard time against Rakuro because playing trash games has refined his skills, allowing him to keep up with high-level players. As the dust clears, she sees the attack master, so she becomes excited, saying she is glad she went after Rakuro. But Animalia reveals that she used 5 spells, knowing Asha's item has already reached its limit, so it won't protect her from Animalia's ultimate skill. In a flashback, we see Rei walking to school, when she sees Rakuro, who keeps talking about the trash games he's playing, noting that he's always smiling. She falls in love with him, and since then, she's always been thinking about him, wanting to see him every day. She tries to talk to him, but she can't muster the courage to do it in person, so she thinks about talking to him inside a game. Back in the present, Rakuro notes that he's been saved by a character named Saiger Zero, thinking she isn't a player killer. But he suspects that she also wants to learn about the unique scenario, so he doesn't trust her, thinking about finding a way out. Animalia prepares to use her ultimate skill, saying she will self-destruct, and take Asha with her. Asha panics, knowing the item won't protect her, so she tries to stop Animalia, but she activates her skill, killing Asha in an instant. A dark energy covers the area, grabbing everyone's attention, and Rakuro realizes that the player killers are distracted. He uses this chance to escape, stepping on Rei's head, and telling her that he's sorry. He jumps past the player killers, and he runs to the gate, as Rei continues to attack them, allowing him to escape. The player killers blame Rei for their failure, but she recalls how Rakuro told her that he's sorry, causing her to become flustered. The player killers note that she's acting weird, and one of them charges in, thinking she's wide open, but she slices him in half, scaring his companions. She reveals that she's angry, blaming them for Rakuro's sudden departure, so she kills all of them. Meanwhile, Emil opens a gate, allowing Rakuro to escape to the rabbit country. Emil reveals that she ran out of magic because of her transformation spell, but she was able to replenish it by drinking a potion. Rakuro receives a message from Asha, telling him that she didn't lose to him and he was only able to escape because of the attack master. She says that she wants to talk to him, inviting him to call Katsuo for a meeting and unite rounds. But he finds her suspicious because she doesn't want to talk to him in SLF. He also receives a message from Katsuo, who just received an invitation from Asha, wondering if Rikuro is going to back out, but he decides to attend the meeting. He tells Emil that he's going to proceed with the unique scenario, so she takes him to a coliseum, where he is about to undergo serious battle training. She tells him that he needs to defeat 10 monsters, and that he can only use Vorpal weapons during the event. He agrees to this, saying he is ready to take on the monsters, but as Emil opens the gate, a group of level 65 pack hounds appear. Rikuro panics, wondering why he needs to go up against a group of level 65 monsters, but Emil tells him that this is how the event works, and he ends up dying. We cut to Rei, who is happy that she was able to see Rikuro. She thinks about sending him a friend request the next time they meet, thinking he will accept it and they will become friends in real life. But she reveals that she wasn't able to find him after she defeated the player killers, so she wonders where he went. We see Rikuro in the Colosseum, as Emil reveals that this is his 7th attempt. The hounds charge at him, as he notes that he is having a hard time because of their synchronized attacks. He thinks that there is a pack leader giving orders, and he sees a hound at a distance, thinking it's their leader. So he attacks it, but it starts running away, and the hounds charge at him, but he realizes that their attacks are no longer synchronized. He pursues the leader, throwing his knife, which slows it down, and he catches up to it, landing critical hits in rapid succession. The leader dies, and without their leader, the hounds can no longer launch synchronized attacks, so he easily defeats them. Emil congratulates him on clearing the first round, and she reveals the next opponent, which is a monster with tentacles. He uses hit-and-run tactics, allowing him to secure victory on his 4th attempt. He easily defeats the 3rd opponent, which is a goblin berserker, and the 4th opponent is even easier, because it's a boar, and he has the advantage because of his rodeo experience. But he struggles against his 5th opponent, which is a toxic eagle, and he dies over 100 times before he is able to defeat it. He wins against the 6th and 7th opponents on his first try, because he is able to figure out the monster's tactics, and the 8th opponent is a 2-headed tiger, which he defeats on his 2nd try. The 9th opponent is a golem, and he struggles to formulate a strategy to defeat it, but he is able to win by stripping it down after he dodges its attack. Rikuro celebrates, knowing there is only one opponent left, and he reaches level 31, but he isn't happy about this, because he could have gained more levels if it wasn't for the collar. He tells Emil to reveal the last opponent, but Vash appears, telling him that his timing is perfect, because Vash just caught a powerful monster, thinking it would be a great opponent for him. Vash releases the restraints, revealing that it's a sorcerer who tried to fuse with a tree to prolong its lifespan. He thinks that Rikuro isn't strong enough to defeat it, so he sets a different clear condition, telling Rikuro that he will win if he can survive for 5 minutes. He thinks that it's too easy, but the monster attacks him, and he struggles to keep up with it, as Vash tells him that he's filled with confidence, wondering if he has the skills to back it up. We learn that this monster is nothing like the others, and Rikuro is the first player to ever fight it, but it's far stronger than the opponents he faced in the Colosseum, as we see it's at level 120. Rikuro does his best to avoid its attacks, sliding under its roots, and he even lands a hit, but he realizes it's immune to physical attacks. He gets pushed back by its chains, but Emil tells him he only has 4 minutes to go. He has trouble predicting the movements of the roots, and he notes that its chains also apply a debuff. He does his best to defend himself, but the monster starts attacking with magic as well. It's able to use different types of magic, and Rikuro doesn't think he's going to be able to survive the 5 minutes. He keeps on dodging, but the attacks start to get more intense. The timer reaches 3 minutes, but he starts to become exhausted. He starts to accept that he's going to lose, but he starts to realize he has fallen into the habit of giving up too easily and taking the easy route. He snaps himself out of it, refusing to give up. He runs along its roots, charging straight at the monster, but Vash wonders what he can accomplish. Rikuro manages to disarm the monster, preventing it from using magic, but it starts to go berserk with its roots. He manages to grab onto its staff, but the monster goes wild chasing after him. Emil cheers him on, telling him there's only a minute left. He does his best to dodge, but his path gets blocked, and he gets grabbed by a chain, which gives him debuffs to his speed. He realizes he won't be able to dodge anymore, and the monster attacks him, so he throws its staff away. The monster targets the staff instead, managing to reclaim it, but Rakuro calls it dumb for not finishing him off, as the timer counts down to 0. But the monster starts blasting him anyway, and Rakuro wonders why it's not over, but Vash ends up stopping the creature and crushing it with a single hit. Rakuro wonders how he could damage it, and Vash reveals its physical immunity was only active when it was holding its staff. Emil congratulates him on his success, and Rakuro gets excited for his reward. Vash declares him an honorary rabbit, giving him a title, but Rakuro can't believe that's all he gets. Vash removes his collar, and he successfully completes his unique scenario, but Rakuro can't believe he didn't get anything out of it. He spies on Vash, wanting to get a rare item, and he spots a fancy-looking box. He wonders what kind of rare item it might contain, and when Vash opens it, it just turns out to be a carrot, which he enjoys. Rakuro logs out of the game and realizes it's late, so he decides to get some rest. When he gets back in the game, we see he was given a bonus scenario, but he doesn't know how to start it, so he decides to get to the next area first. However, he remembers all the people who are after him, and the marks on his body are easily recognizable, so he doesn't know what to do. Emil suggests hiding his whole body, but Rakuro doesn't know how it's possible. Emil takes him to a shop in the Rabbit Palace, where he meets the merchant Peets. Peets recognizes him as the Birdman that everyone has been talking about, but Rakuro shows that it's just a mask. This gives Emil an idea, and she asks Peets about a certain clothing item. It turns out to just be a sheet that covers his whole body. They are able to walk around town without being recognized, but he starts losing it, thinking he looks ridiculous. Emil tells him to bear with it until they get out of the town, and Rakuro notes that there are 3 locations they can head to next. There's a prismatic forest that contains a labyrinth cave, a lake area in the crater of a dead volcano, and the iron ruins of divinity. Emil suggests going to the lake, but Rakuro ends up deciding on going to the prismatic forest. As he explains his reasoning behind his choice, Emil is distracted as she recognizes someone, but when Rakuro looks over, he sees that it's Rei who is watching them, and he finds her pretty sus. Meanwhile, we meet Orsalot, the leader of a Shurikai, as he reprimands his men because they failed to complete their mission. They blame the attack master, saying they weren't expecting her to interfere, but Orsalot reminds them that they are dealing with a unique scenario, so top players are likely to show up. He orders them to pursue Rakuro, saying they should threaten him to obtain information about Emil. Asha reminds everyone that they have another target, but Orsalot tells her that they can't defeat it, thinking unique monsters are unbeatable. He reveals that they are the only ones who know how to make it spawn, but they think that it's not worth fighting, and Asha calls them useless. We learn that the members of a Shurikai were hated by everyone because they used to kill players indiscriminately. But after an update which made killing players more difficult, they decided to change their strategy and stay away from danger. Asha thinks that her guildmates can't help her with the unique monster, which is known as the Tomb Guard, but she is determined to defeat it, saying she is willing to do anything to win. We return to Rakuro as he sees Rei, causing him to freak out because he finds her intimidating. He recalls how he stepped on her, and he thinks that she wants to get back at him, so he decides to run away. The player killers notice him, and they see through his disguise, so they chase after him. They think that he's trying to escape to the Iron Ruins, so they tell their colleagues to set up an ambush. But we learn that he took a detour to deceive them, and he's still headed to the Prismatic Forest. The player killers lose sight of him, and he is about to leave the town, but he sees Rei, so he becomes scared, thinking she's going to kill him. But she just sends him a friend request, and she starts acting weird, causing him to become confused. He finds her suspicious because she is smart enough to see through his deception, thinking she has an ulterior motive. But he is confident in his ability to deal with other players, so he decides to accept her friend request. She is overjoyed to see this, and we learn that she was able to find him purely by chance because she lost sight of him. But she recalls how she went to the forest when she first arrived at the town, so she decided to go there. Rei offers to help Rakuro level up, but he doesn't trust her, so he tells her that he doesn't need her help. She apologizes for being rude, wishing him luck, and they bid each other farewell. After he leaves, she notes that Emil didn't have a name over her head, thinking she must be an NPC, and Rei is happy that she was finally able to talk to Rikuro. The player killers realize that they have been deceived, and they make their way to the forest, but they see her at the gate, causing them to become frightened, so they decide to run away. Rikuro enters the prismatic forest, and he realizes that there are plenty of creatures in the area. He sees a butterfly, thinking it will drop something expensive, so he kills it, and takes the nectar it was carrying. He reads the item description, and he learns that it's fun to throw, because it's very fragile. He thinks about gathering more items before he takes on the area boss, and he equips a throwing knife, revealing that he was traumatized by his encounter with the toxic eagle, so he learned to use projectiles. He throws it at a flower, causing a mantis to appear, and he attacks it, killing it in one hit. He checks his inventory, realizing that he was able to collect plenty of items, but they notice a commotion, and they see a giant beetle fighting a swarm of bees. We learn that the beetle entered the bees' territory, searching for nectar, and the queen isn't happy about this, so she orders the swarm to attack. But they can't penetrate its armor, and it continues to make its way to their nest. After some time, they are able to crack its armor, but it starts flying, charging at the queen, and killing her in one hit. The bees decide to retreat, and the beetle starts eating the nectar, but upon seeing Rikuro, it decides to go after him. He runs away, wondering why it's chasing him, and Emil thinks that it must be because of the nectar. He throws it away, hitting a mantis, so the beetle starts attacking it, and he sees an opening, so he lunges at the beetle, targeting the cracks on its armor, to land several critical hits. He manages to defeat it, and he realizes that his inventory is now full, so he decides to stop collecting items. While walking around the forest, he sees webs on a tree, as he recalls that the area boss is called the clown spider, so he concludes that they are close to its location. He sees a cave, and he decides to enter it, ready to fight the boss. We cut to a group of players in the forest, as they discuss how the monsters in the area are no match for them, so they decide to fight the boss. But as they enter the cave, their leader gets stuck on a web, as the clown spider appears. We return to Rikuro, as he tries to enter the cave, but he realizes that he can't enter, because there are still players inside. He sees the leader of the group, as he gets crushed to death, causing the entrance to open. Rikuro enters the cave, and he sees the bodies of the other players. He tells Emil to stand back, because he wants to defeat the clown spider alone, and he scales the wall, avoiding the webs along the way. We learn that he has learned new skills in the arena, thinking it will help him defeat the boss. He sees a boulder approaching him, so he uses his leap skill to avoid it, but he is about to hit a web. However, he holds onto it, and steps on it, revealing that he knows which parts of the web aren't sticky. He sees more boulders approaching, so he uses a skill to increase his speed, allowing him to dodge all of them. He reaches the boss, and it tries to attack him, but he charges in, launching a combination of attacks, which causes it to fall down. It crashes to the ground, but he thinks that it's still alive, and he sees heavy objects attached to the ceiling, so he decides to use them, dropping them down to crush the boss. But it gets back up, and he decides to fight it head-on, thinking it's nothing compared to the Night Slayer. He delivers a devastating attack, hitting its weak spot, and killing it in an instant. He tells Emil that the fight was too easy, saying he didn't even take any damage, and at that moment, he receives a message from Asha. We see Katsuo as he defeats a boss, and he also receives the message, which tells them they should spend time together. Meanwhile, Rei tells Mana that she was able to talk to Rikuro, but Mana reveals that he no longer visits the shop, thinking he must be addicted to SLF. As she walks around the city, she sees Rikuro reading a magazine, and he learns that SLF is about to get a major update, thinking it must be what Asha was talking about. We learn that he had a meeting with Katsuo and Asha, where Asha invited them to fight the Tomb Guard with her, and Katsuo is excited to hear this, because he always wanted to fight a unique monster. She reveals that she fought the boss with the strongest members of her clan, and they didn't stand a chance. But she thinks that the three of them might be able to defeat it, saying she wants them to fight it after the major update. Rikuro wonders why she's inviting them, because their levels aren't that high, but she tells them not to worry, because their skills matter more than their levels. She offers to compensate them for their help, and Rikuro decides to join her, but he thinks that she's hiding something, saying she should tell them the full story. Rikuro leaves the store, and he sees Rei waiting for him. She greets him, but he struggles to remember who she is, and it takes him a while to recall that she was his classmate. She tells him that she also plays SLF, asking him if they can play together, but at that moment, he receives a message from Asha, telling him that she is waiting for him, so he dashes away. She notes that he bought plenty of energy drinks, so she thinks that he will be playing SLF for a while, and she decides to look for him there. He logs into the game, and Emil welcomes him back, asking him what they will be doing today. He tells her that he will be fighting the Tomb Guard after the major update, and he will have to leave her while he's fighting it. But she suddenly freaks out, saying she needs to tell her father about this. He wonders what's wrong with her, as he recalls his meeting with Asha, where he asked her what he should do with Emil while they're fighting the Tomb Guard. She advises him to keep Emil out of it, because when an NPC dies in SLF, they never return, and we see Emil running to her father, thinking it's going to be trouble. They meet with Vash, and it seems he knows the Tomb Guard, saying Rakuro doesn't stand a chance. Rakuro notes that he's just going as a support, and he tries to persuade Vash to give him information. Vash thinks it's a suicide mission, but Rakuro claims he doesn't plan on losing, saying his honor is on the line. Vash reveals that the Tomb Guard was also an honorable man, but lost his wife over a lie, and became cursed with an undying body. He thinks it would be good if he was put out of his misery, so he takes Rakuro over to the forge. Rakuro gets excited seeing this, and we meet the blacksmith Billick. Vash asks for his Vorpal blades, and he admires them, deciding to ascend them. Billick is shocked hearing this, realizing that Vash will be doing it himself. He goes to get the forge ready, and Vash asks if Rakuro has any other good materials to work with. Rakuro checks his inventory, and decides on using the shell from the giant beetle. As Vash prepares to work, Billick tells Rakuro he's lucky, because it's been years since Vash last worked the forge, noting that he was the master blacksmith before he became king. He starts hammering the blade, as magic circles pop out and are then absorbed. Rakuro wonders what's going on, and Billick reveals that ascending involves reading the memories and experience of a weapon and ascending it into its true form, saying that Vorpal weapons remember their battles against strong foes. Vash starts singing as he works, and Billick is eager to see how it will turn out. Vash finishes the upgrade, and reveals that the blades have new names, the Moon Blades of Waxing and Waning. Rakuro excitedly checks them out, and finds that the waxing blade is better against higher level enemies, consuming his HP to deal more damage, while the waning blade is able to refill his HP, and there's also a special gauge that fills up after dealing critical hits that allows the blades to fuse. Rakuro is excited to try it out, but gets a notification that he doesn't have enough stats to equip them, and he realizes he will need to wait until level 50 to use them. Rakuro meets up with Asha and Katsuo, but they are annoyed at him for being 3 hours late. He mentions he was able to get information about the Tomb Guard, so Asha decides to forgive him. Hearing that the Tomb Guard is an undead monster, Asha thinks of something, saying she will be back later that night. Rakuro wonders what they should do in the meantime, so Asha gives them a map and a fishing rod, telling them to grind at the Iron Ruins. As Asha is leaving, she spots Emil around Rakuro's neck. She thinks it's a dumb disguise, but Rakuro claims it's the latest fashion trend, and Asha is shocked when it seems to fool Katsuo. Asha heads off, and Katsuo thinks they should go as well, but Emil's ears start to get tired holding onto Rakuro, and Katsuo is finally able to notice her, wishing he could have a unique NPC of his own. We see that in another meeting, Asha reveals that the Tomb Guard will activate a skill at the beginning of the battle, which will set the max level for all characters to 50, but the Tomb Guard's level is fixed at 200, so the high-level players will be at a disadvantage because there's going to be a massive level gap. She explains that she chose Rakuro and Katsuo because they are both skilled players despite their low levels. But she tells them that they still need to reach level 50, giving them a guide on how to level up faster. Rakuro and Katsuo enter the Iron Ruins, where they search for the hidden area that Asha mentioned. Katsuo reveals that he's at level 25, but Rakuro mocks him, saying he's already at level 31. A drone suddenly attacks them, and Katsuo tells Rakuro to stand back as he unleashes his red spirit fist. The drone charges at him, but he counters, shattering it in an instant. Rakuro is impressed, inquiring about the spirit fist, so Katsuo reveals that it increases his strength and vitality. More drones appear, so he jumps into action, destroying them with ease, as he reveals that he chose to be a monk, and he focused on increasing his health and vitality, so he can function as a tank for their team. He thinks that Rikuro spent his points on strength and agility, but he tells Katsuo that he focused on luck instead of strength. Emil adds that he's bursting with Vorpal Soul, but Katsuo has no idea what she means. They follow the guide that Asha gave them, and it leads them to a pit, telling them to jump into it. Katsuo thinks that she's playing a prank on them, thinking she wants them to die, but he decides to take the lead, because he's the tank of the team. Emil thinks he's a girl, but Rikuro tells her that Katsuo is a man, and she's surprised to hear this, thinking the world is full of mysteries. Katsuo tells them to go down, calling Rikuro a loser, so he becomes upset, and jumps into the pit. He enters the hidden area, where he sees a lake, and he reads the guide, revealing that they can find serpents if they go fishing. Its XP drop is ridiculously high, so they decide to look for it, and Rikuro catches a fish, but he's disappointed to see that it's just a salmon. Katsuo is about to catch something, thinking it's a small fish, but a massive serpent emerges, and they prepare to take it down. Rikuro equips his new weapon, and we learn that it was created by Bilik, using the materials dropped by the queen bee. He reveals that the right-hand blade has a special attribute, saying it has a corrosive poison, which slowly destroys the target's body and creates a weak point. Rikuro uses it to stab the serpent as Katsuo attacks it, but he realizes that their level is too low, so they can't deal enough damage to take it down. But we see a mark on its body, which was created by the corrosive poison, and Rikuro slashes it repeatedly, creating an opening on the serpent's body. Katsuo uses his Black Spirit Fist, increasing his attack damage, and he strikes the opening, landing a critical hit. He realizes that Rikuro was able to create a weak point, and Emil charges in, but the serpent is about to attack her. Katsuo protects her, and he launches a counterattack, which stuns the serpent. They attack its weak point, allowing them to defeat it, and they are able to level up. Katsuo reveals that he gained 4 levels, and he learned new skills, thinking he should combine them at the skill garden. Rikuro can't understand him, so he explains that high-level skills can be linked at the skill garden to create combo skills. We learn that Rikuro is completely clueless because he skipped the tutorial, and Katsuo gives him more information, causing him to freak out as he realizes how ignorant he is. He decides to continue grinding, thinking it should help him feel better, and after some time, Asha joins them, realizing that their progress is insane. We see that they're in a tent, which functions as a save point, but Asha thinks it's too expensive, saying she only used it because they don't have enough time. She tells everyone that they need to leave, because they need to talk to the unique NPC Setsuna, who only appears during a full moon, saying they need to do it to fight the tomb guard. They go to the forest, where Asha opens a secret passage, and leads them through a tunnel. They reach an open area, and they see Setsuna as she sings a lullaby. Rikuro finds her strange, as he notes that she's wearing clothes from the real world, wondering if she has something to do with the unique scenario. Asha greets her, and she introduces her companions, saying they are her minions, and she claims that they can put the tomb guard to rest. Setsuna finds Rikuro interesting, because he has the Night Slayer's mark, saying he reminds her of someone she knows. Asha tells her to inform them about the tomb guard, and a window appears, asking them if they want to begin the unique scenario. They decide to accept it, so Setsuna reveals that the tomb guard was her lover, but they had a minor misunderstanding prior to her death, and since then, he's been spending all of his time guarding her grave. She can't recall when she died, but she has already accepted that her life has ended, saying the tomb guard needs to move on, and she feels guilty because he's tied down to her past. She explains that he used a program to create a barrier, and he's using the energy of the moonlight to hide his location. But she reveals that the barrier will be cracked on the night of a new moon, and his location is going to be revealed, so they will be able to find him. She implores them to put her lover to rest, and Asha assures her that they will finish the task. Rikuro and Katsuo are surprised to hear this, because they recall that Asha was brutal to NPCs, revealing that she made the royal family suffer in Unite rounds. They think she has regained her humanity, but she attacks them, blowing them away. They immediately surrender, because she's already at max level, and she tells them that she would have slaughtered them if it weren't for their quest. She explains that Setsuna's name and backstory got her emotionally invested, and Rikuro finds this cool, saying a game is more fun if they take it seriously. Katsu agrees with him, and she's happy to hear this, because they can understand her stupidity. She reminds them that the Tomb Guard will be a difficult opponent, but everyone is determined to succeed. After some time, Rakuro returns to the real world, realizing that he played all night. We learn that he has been killing serpents with Katsu, and he's already at level 51. He's preparing for the fight with the Tomb Guard, thinking his skills are going to determine the outcome. He greets his mother Aika, who is obsessed with insects, and she's glad that he left his room before breakfast. He tells her that he didn't want to be physically logged out again, and we learn that she unplugs his console if he doesn't obey her. We meet his sister Rumi, who is reading a fashion magazine, and Rakuro sees Toa, knowing she's playing as Asha. But he doesn't tell Rumi about this, and we learn that she's a huge fan, because she seems to know everything about Toa. Rakuro thinks that Setsuna is similar to Toa, thinking this is the reason why she has decided to take the game seriously. Their father Senji returns from his fishing trip, and he's holding onto a huge fish. He tells them that he was able to catch it, but Rumi thinks that they'll be eating nothing but fish again. We learn that they have different hobbies, and they're afraid that they won't be able to spend time as a family, so they had an agreement in their household, where they will be eating together every Sunday. After their meal, Rakuro returns to his room, thinking he's the most normal person in his family. He realizes that he only has 2 weeks before the boss battle begins, thinking he needs to work on his reflexes because he needs to evade the Tomb Guard's attacks to survive. He decides to train in Berserk Online because the glitches in the game make the attacks difficult to avoid. Rakuro logs into the game, thinking about fighting the final boss, but he encounters a player named Dragonfly, who reveals that he's a total noob, asking Rakuro if he can give him some tips. Rakuro is surprised to see a new player, because nobody wants to play the game, so he decides to fight Dragonfly, wanting to see what he can do. The battle begins, and he charges at Rakuro, using a glitch that allows his arm to be rubber like Luffy, and Rakuro recognizes the move, knowing how powerful it is. Dragonfly launches the attack, creating a shockwave, but we see that Rakuro was able to dodge it, explaining that he used a bug move called Yo-Yo. He's impressed that Dragonfly was able to exploit a glitch, but he explains that there's still much to learn about the game, saying he's going to demonstrate just how buggy it is. Dragonfly charges at him, but he launches a devastating combo, allowing him to win the match. He tells Dragonfly that his technique is invincible, but he's determined to defeat Rakuro, saying he wants a rematch. Rakuro accepts it, and Dragonfly rushes in, but it looks like he didn't change his strategy. So Rakuro tries to punch him, but he suddenly disappears, and we see that he used the yo-yo glitch to dodge the attack. Rakuro is impressed, but he recalls that he's supposed to be training to fight the Tomb Guard, and he ended up fighting a noob, thinking he needs to find a worthy opponent. Dragonfly retracts his legs, allowing him to close the distance, and he manages to hit Rakuro, dealing considerable damage. Rakuro tells him that he's making progress, but he chose to use the wrong move, so he's going to need time to recover. Rakuro proceeds to give him a beating, pushing him back, but he's determined to win, so he charges forward, enduring the attacks, and he goes on the offensive, launching his fists at Rakuro. He's surprised to see this, because nobody has ever used that move, and he knows that he can counter it, but he decides to let it hit him, losing the fight on purpose. Rakuro tells him that he just invented a new move, telling him to name it, but he doesn't know what to call it. Rakuro decides to show him a bug, and at the beginning of the match, he creates a clone, revealing that he was the one who discovered the move. He tells Dragonfly that there is much to learn about the game, saying this is what makes Berserk Online worth playing. He fights Dragonfly with his clone, and he manages to secure victory, as Dragonfly realizes that he doesn't stand a chance. He thanks Rakuro for helping him out, saying he was able to learn a lot, and he promises to give his new move a good name. Meanwhile, we see Katsu fishing at the lake, because he's still at level 47, so he needs to keep grinding. He doesn't enjoy doing it alone, saying he wants to play with Rakuro, but we see that he's eating with his family. After some time, Rakuro returns to the rabbit country, where he plans to link his skills to create combos. So Emil leads him to the skill garden, where we meet her sister Ilka, who tells Rakuro that she can combine his skills. He realizes that his high-level skills have piled up, and she explains that combining them will produce superior results. So he decides to do it, and she tells him to wait while she works on his order. After a few moments, Elka returns with a strange potion, telling him to drink it to learn the combo skills. He reluctantly drinks it, allowing him to learn them, but Elka tells him that she's selling skill manuals, offering to give him a discount. Emil tries to warn him about her attitude, but Rakuro tells Emil not to worry, saying he's willing to spend money for special items. Elka shows him her selection, saying he can easily afford them, but he's surprised to see that they're ridiculously expensive, thinking she's trying to rip him off. But she persuades him to buy something, and he ends up going with a skill called Moon's Reflection. But Rakuro regrets his decision because he just lost all of his money, saying he was afraid of how Elka would react. Rakuro has a meeting with his friends, where Asha reminds them that they have 2 weeks before the boss battle. She reveals that they have a problem because the members of Ashura know about the Tomb Guard, and they have been using him to level up, explaining that players gain experience whenever they encounter a unique monster. She knows that they'll be there during the night of the new moon, thinking they're going to be a hindrance. Katsuo wonders why she won't talk to them since she is their guildmate, but she explains that they're against her plan. She reminds Rakuro and Katsuo that the Ashura members are notorious for killing other players, telling them about an update which gave player killers a special status. She explains that when a player defeats a player killer, he receives a bounty, as well as the right to take anything that belongs to the player killer. She knows that the members of Ashura are holding onto rare items, and other players are hunting them down, so they found a way to reduce the damage dealt to them by exploiting the system. But she reveals that her guildmates are vulnerable in their hideout, so she considers killing all of them, saying that they are no use to her. We see players trying to purchase resurrection items, but they realize that the shops are out of stock because Asha already bought all of it. They discuss how their leader is having a meeting with the other clans, thinking they're going to go on a raid because they were ordered to stock up on items. On the day of a major update, we see players talking about the changes made to SLF, and we learn that there are new features added to the game. They think about exploring the new changes, but one of them hears a strange sound, so she springs into action. We learn that Rei is the one behind it, because she's incredibly nervous as she thinks about inviting Rakuro to explore the game with her. She appears to be hesitating because she doesn't know how he will react, but she musters the courage to send the invitation, causing her to feel overjoyed as she reveals that she worked on it for 2 weeks. But at that moment, she receives a message from her sister, who informs her that the location of Ashura hideout has been leaked, ordering her to join her clanmates immediately. Meanwhile, we see Rakuro enjoying tea with Emil when a bird approaches him, thinking he's being attacked. But he realizes that it's just the male bird, and he receives the invitation from Rei, but he notes that his schedule is packed. So he thinks about turning her down when another male bird arrives, giving him another message from Rei, who tells him that there's an emergency, so she won't be able to join him. He thinks about shopping before fighting the Tomb Guard, but Vash joins him, telling him that the night of the new moon is approaching. He tells Vash that he's going to proceed with his plan, and Vash notes that he's serious, so he tells Rakuro to put the Tomb Guard to rest, because he has outlived his time. Emma won't be joining the fight, so she gives Rakuro an amulet, saying Vash gave it to her. She tells him that it will protect him, but he claims that he doesn't need it, saying he will win because of his skills. He wears it, and we learn that it's called an ID shard necklace, but it has no effect, and nobody knows who used it in the past. That evening, the members of Ashura gather at their hideout, waiting for Asha to return, because they're planning to use the Tomb Guard to help them level up. But Rei suddenly attacks them as they realize that they're surrounded by players from other clans, who want to punish them for their evil deeds. Orcelot realizes that the clans have formed an alliance to take them down, and he wonders how this happened, because they're not supposed to know about the location of the hideout. They charge in, slaughtering the members of the Ashura, but Orcelot manages to defend himself, and he orders his men to retreat to the hidden area. We see Rakuro and Katsuo ready to fight the Tomb Guard, as Rakuro reveals that he obtained a new sash, which increases his vitality. But Katsuo tells him that it doesn't make a difference because he's still a glass cannon. Asha joins them, telling them that Rei slaughtered everyone in the Ashura, and Rakuro realizes that this is the emergency she was talking about. Katsuo tells Asha she's in trouble because she betrayed her clanmates, but she doesn't care, and she forms a party with her friends, reminding them about their plan. We return to Orcelot as he escapes with his men, but he realizes that the entrance to the hidden area is blocked because there are already players inside, and he concludes that Asha betrayed them. Asha hears him, but she doesn't care, calling him a loser. Rikuro notes that Setsuna isn't there, so Asha explains that they can't see her without the light of the full moon. Asha is determined to complete the quest for her, and she touches the tree, creating a crack on the barrier. They go through it, and they enter an open area, where they see the tomb guard protecting Setsuna's remains. The system notifies them about the encounter, and their levels are decreased to 50 as the tomb guard prepares to take them on. Rikuro approaches him, and he launches a wind slash with ridiculous speed, but Rikuro manages to dodge it, and he strikes the tomb guard, but it has no effect. He counters, pushing Rikuro back, and he follows up with a wind slash, which Rikuro manages to deflect. They start exchanging blows, as Asha notes that he's able to keep up with the tomb guard's movements, because they discussed his attack patterns in their meeting. We learn that he's able to kill players in a single hit, and his wind slash is unblockable, so the only way to survive against it is to dodge or deflect it. But it has a single frame execution, so it's extremely difficult to grasp the timing. Asha explains that the tomb guard has deadlier skills at his disposal, and they conclude that he's unbeatable, thinking he's a special type of monster, which can be defeated by fulfilling a certain condition. Asha thinks they will win if they survive for a few minutes, revealing that his fighting style changes as the fight drags on, and Phase 1 lasts for 10 minutes. Rikuro continues to fight the tomb guard, dodging his attacks and landing a few hits. Asha thinks they're going to win the fight, because Rikuro is incredibly skilled. But the tomb guard launches a wind slash, which ends up hitting Rikuro, who realizes that he doesn't stand a chance. His health reaches 0, but Katsuo uses an item, allowing him to fight on. We learn that Asha gave them resurrection items before the battle, explaining that it can revive players at full health if it's used within 10 seconds after death. She reveals that she bought all of the items from the stores, and they each cost 4 million gold to buy, surprising the duo with how expensive they are. She decides that they will each have 4 of them, and she shows them an item which can be used to revive players at 50% health, giving each of them 5. She reveals that their plan is to let Rikuro take point, while Katsuo and Asha will serve as the backup, thinking it's the only way to defeat the tomb guard. We return to the battle, as Rikuro is revived using the item, and the tomb guard attacks Katsuo, who barely manages to evade, saying he will take over until Rikuro is ready. Asha explains that they have survived for over 2 minutes, which is a record for a first encounter, wondering what Rikuro thinks about the tomb guard. So he tells her that he can't win alone, saying the tomb guard deserves to be in the same level as the Night Slayer. He notes that his twin blades are about to break, thinking he needs tougher weapons to win the battle, so he decides to use his marsh daggers, because he has maxed out its durability. He charges in, grabbing the tomb guard's attention, and Katsuo says that he'll continue to serve as the backup. The tomb guard raises his sword, and he uses his thunderclap skill, summoning lightning bolts, but Rikuro uses his skate foot ability, allowing him to move with ridiculous speed. We see Katsuo and Asha struggling to dodge the lightning, as Asha explains that the skill will last for 5 seconds. Katsuo barely manages to survive, but Rikuro thinks that the lightning will never hit him because his skill allows him to move faster than lightning. But the tomb guard uses his Nimbus Fist skill, and Rikuro doesn't know how to counter it, so he ends up getting hit, and his health reaches 0. But Katsuo revives him, and he tries to fight the tomb guard, but he's instantly defeated, so Asha uses her item. Rikuro continues the fight, and they stick to their plan, but as the fight drags on, Katsuo explains that he's struggling against the attacks, saying he can only survive for a few seconds. Asha reveals that they have consumed half of their resurrection items, but she thinks they're doing a good job. The tomb guard suddenly stops attacking, as Asha explains that they have survived for 10 minutes, so they have entered Phase 2. The tomb guard summons his horse Kirin, and Katsuo reveals that they have been expecting this, saying he's ready to fight it. But he realizes that it's a massive creature, causing him to feel intimidated, so he starts running away. We learn that their plan is to prevent it from being mounted by the tomb guard, because once he rides it, he will become an unstoppable force, and the party won't stand a chance against him. It starts launching missiles, and Katsuo barely manages to dodge them, wondering how he's supposed to stop it. Asha advises him to ride it, reminding him that he played a game about riding horses, but he explains that it's a fighting game. thinking the techniques he learned in that game won't work against Kirin. It starts firing lasers, and Katsuo continues to run away, but he observes Kirin, knowing it's a machine, so he thinks it needs to undergo maintenance. At that moment, he sees a ladder, so he decides to climb it, allowing him to mount it, and he wraps his whip around its neck. But it starts moving around, and he struggles to stay on its back. Asha notes that they're running out of resurrection items, so she decides to use her trump card, which is known as the reward scales. We learn that it's a unique item, which sacrifices items on one side to receive the perks on the other side. She offers her most expensive items, which are worth over 30 million gold, planning to use them to temporarily boost her friend's stats. We see that Rakuro is running out of stamina, and Katsuo is about to fall off. But Asha activates the scale, boosting their stats, and Rakuro can immediately tell the difference, realizing that she gave him a buff. He notes that his luck and stamina have increased, and he decides to fight with his fists, as he reveals that he has a skill which uses luck to determine its power. The Tomb Guard is about to use his Wind Slash, but Rakuro uses his skill, the Hand of Fortune, disarming the Tomb Guard, and he uses his skate foot to steal the sword. He thinks that the Tomb Guard can't fight without it, but he realizes that the sword is too heavy. Katsuo is still struggling, but Asha tells him to hold on, because Phase 2 will end in 4 minutes. He comes up with an idea, and his whip ends up breaking, but he remains unfazed, thinking they'll be able to win with his plan. The Tomb Guard launches an attack with his hand, and Rakuro barely manages to dodge it, realizing that he's still dangerous without his sword. But he notes that he went the wrong direction, so Asha is now closer to the Tomb Guard. He charges at her, and Rakuro tries to stop him, but the Tomb Guard suddenly grabs him, smashing him to the ground. He ends up dying, and the Tomb Guard prepares to kill Asha with his Nimbus Fist, but she dashes forward, knowing she can evade it if she runs past him. She manages to survive, and she uses the item on Rakuro, allowing him to get back up. He continues his battle with the Tomb Guard, as she tells him to be careful, saying she was only able to survive because the Tomb Guard used Nimbus Fist. Phase 2 is about to end, but Asha hears Katsuo screaming, and she realizes that he tied himself to Kirin so that he will never fall off. His plan seems to be working, and Phase 2 comes to an end, as Kirin and the Tomb Guard stop moving, but Asha warns everyone not to let their guard down, because the real challenge is about to begin. The Tomb Guard's armor starts breaking, as she explains that the Ashurikai was wiped out in an instant when he unleashed a powerful shockwave. But she reveals that she brought holy water, saying the Tomb Guard is probably an undead creature, because Vash mentioned that he has outlived his time. He's about to unleash the shockwave, but she throws the holy water, as she explains that it's the best weapon for fighting undead creatures. The bottle shatters upon impact, covering the Tomb Guard in holy water, and he starts screaming, as Rakuro wonders if he's going to attack. But they realize that his move has been cancelled, because the holy water worked against him. His body starts burning, as they enter Phase 3, and Kirin transforms into a robot, causing Katsuo to fall off. Everyone is confused, because Asha never made it this far, so they weren't able to discuss this during the strategy meeting. But Rakuro thinks they shouldn't allow Kirin to merge with the Tomb Guard, and Katsuo runs away, as it starts pursuing him. Rakuro thinks they should change their strategy, telling Asha to help Katsuo, as he notes that the Tomb Guard's body is starting to crumble, thinking they need to survive until he completely falls apart. Asha speculates that they need to survive another 10 minutes, because that's how long it took to complete the other phases. Rakuro tells her that he can handle the Tomb Guard on his own, so she agrees to his plan, telling him to be careful, because she won't be able to revive him if he ends up dying. But as he charges forward, he thinks about defeating the Tomb Guard, because he wants to have fun, thinking surviving until the timer expires is too boring. He manages to deflect the Tomb Guard's attacks, and he closes the distance, managing to land a hit, as he notes that he's able to deal damage, so he concludes that the Tomb Guard isn't invincible. He equips his new helmet, using it to defend himself, and he wields his Moonblades, planning to defeat the Tomb Guard before he falls apart. He tries to attack Rakuro, but he uses his helmet to parry, and this creates an opening, allowing him to land a critical hit, but the Tomb Guard endures it, and he pushes Rakuro back. He charges forward, but Rakuro uses his skill, allowing him to land an attack from behind. So the Tomb Guard watches his back, but Rakuro reveals that it was just a distraction, and he launches a surprise attack, allowing him to land several critical hits. The tomb guard falls to his knees as Rakuro becomes excited, so he starts laughing, and Katsuo wonders if he's okay. But Asha reveals that he's just enjoying the battle because he likes being the underdog, saying this will allow him to fight better. Katsuo continues to run away, thinking he might be able to defeat Kirin, but Asha tells him not to bother, saying they just need to keep it distracted. But he uses his whip, wrapping it around Kirin, but it lifts him and it sends him crashing to the ground. His health reaches 0, so Asha revives him and Kirin starts pursuing her. She gives him an item and she mentions that it will raise his stats for 15 minutes, explaining that it will give him abilities equal to a level 99 player. She tries to tell him that it has a serious side effect, which is the reason why she doesn't want to use it, but Katsuo suddenly consumes it, saying he's willing to take the risk. He starts feeling weird, as he notes that his senses have been affected, thinking it isn't so serious. But Asha tells him that his level will decrease every 30 seconds, so he becomes upset, realizing that he will return to level 20 after the effect wears off. He wonders why she didn't warn him about this, but she tells him that he ate it before she could finish her explanation, and she uses her scale to boost her stats. Kirin continues to pursue him, and he decides to fight back, combining his red and black spirit fists to form the color crimson. He uses his skill, creating a seal on Kirin's leg, and he strikes it, amplifying the damage and causing Kirin to lose balance. Asha activates her buffs, and she stabs the leg with all her might, trying to shatter it, but she realizes that she can't break through it. Kirin fires an energy blast, and Asha manages to survive, but we see that she lost an arm, and Katsuo notes that Kirin's armor is thicker around its waist, thinking they will be able to expose a weak spot if they pry it open. Meanwhile, Rakuro continues to enjoy his battle with the tomb guard, revealing that he has already memorized the attack pattern. He notes that the Moonblades are a good match for his skills, because one of them decreases his health every time he attacks, and he has a special ability called Climax Boost, which significantly increases his stats, but he can only use it when his health is low. We learn that SLF has a gauge that represents hunger, and a player's stamina recovery rate is affected if he's hungry. Rakuro managed his hunger because he has another skill called Hunger Wolf, which temporarily boosts his stats, depending on his health and hunger. He thinks about combining his skills to secure victory, and he charges in, as he notes that the tomb guard sheathed his sword, thinking he's preparing to use Wind Slash. So Rakuro parries, but he doesn't attack, because he saw the ID shard necklace. Rakuro realizes that he knows Vash, and he mentions a person named Alice, as he explains that he has been rotting in the area for eternity. So he doesn't know what happened outside, but he knows that the frontier has been established. Rakuro has no idea what he's talking about, because it sounds so cryptic, and he calls Rakuro the child of the second plan, as he prepares to unleash his full power. The tomb guard exudes an ominous aura, and he attacks with a Wind Slash, but Rakuro manages to avoid it, thinking his moves haven't changed at all. But he suddenly summons lightning, as Rakuro realizes that he can chain his skills, and as the lightning continues to strike the ground, he uses his Nimbus Fist, so Rakuro struggles to keep up with him. He charges at Rakuro, trying to attack with his hand, and he manages to parry it. But the tomb guard continues his relentless assault, as Rakuro notes that he can use his skills without cooldown. He strikes the ground, summoning a fire dragon, and it takes to the sky, forming a dark cloud. The tomb guard uses a combination move, causing dragons to rain from the sky, so Rakuro dashes away, managing to dodge all of them. But he notes that his skills are on cooldown, thinking he's going to die if the onslaught continues, because he's been using Skate Foot to dodge the attacks. He opens his inventory, revealing that he has a plan, but the tomb guard catches up to him, restraining his legs, and preparing to cut him down. He realizes that he has no choice but to parry it, but the tomb guard uses his ultimate skill, slicing through Rakuro's helmet and delivering a devastating blow. Katsuo is about to revive him, but Asha stops him, and the tomb guard is about to walk away, but we see that Rakuro hasn't given up, as he prepares to revive himself. The item activates, bringing him back to life, and Rakuro reveals that he launched the item before he got hit, allowing him to self-revive. But he notes that his equipment is broken, thinking the tomb guard's ultimate skill is overpowered, because it can destroy armor and kill players in a single hit. The Tomb Guard explains that he won't fall until his ultimate skill has been surpassed, and he summons lightning. So Rakuro dashes away, as the Tomb Guard continues to pursue him, chaining his attacks. But Rakuro manages to dodge them, and he notes that the Tomb Guard unleashes a relentless assault before using his ultimate skill. Rakuro has memorized the attack pattern, so the Tomb Guard struggles to hit him, as he notes that he just needs to preserve stamina and maintain the right distance. But his leg is suddenly restrained, so he prepares his resurrection item, knowing the Tomb Guard is about to use his ultimate skill. He launches it into the air, and he gets cut in half, but the item activates, allowing him to fight on. He wonders how he can survive the Tomb Guard's ultimate skill, because he can't dodge it, and it destroys everything in its path, so his weapon will break if he blocks it. He thinks about destroying the Tomb Guard's sword before he uses his ultimate skill, but Rakuro knows that it's impossible, because he won't be able to do it while he's dodging the combination of attacks. He realizes that he's running out of resurrection items, thinking he won't be able to survive until the end of the phase. But the Tomb Guard reminds him that he won't fall until his ultimate skill has been surpassed, and he continues his assault. Hearing this, Rakuro realizes that there's no time limit for Phase 3, and the clear condition is to survive against the skill. But he struggles to counter it, thinking he needs to parry, but he notes that it's incredibly difficult to perform because his timing needs to be perfect. He uses the item which revives him with 50% health, as he realizes that his skills are almost ready, planning to use them to defeat the Tomb Guard. We cut to Asha and Katsuo as they continue fighting Kirin. Katsuo mentions that he's a pro gamer, so he has the skills to defeat Kirin, but Asha suddenly stabs herself, causing him to panic as he wonders why she took her own life. Kirin continues to pursue him, but he manages to revive her, and she reveals that she had to take her own life so that she can be revived with both hands, but Katsuo wonders why she didn't warn him. She targets the midsection, thinking it's the weak spot, and Kirin tries to counter, but Katsuo manages to restrain it, causing it to lose its footing, and it crashes to the ground. He completely immobilizes Kirin as Asha tries to destroy its midsection, but she realizes that her weapon is about to break because she used armor-piercing buffs, which reduces its durability. She reveals that she tried hitting its other body parts, but she can't deal damage, and she notes that the midsection looks suspicious because it seems to contain the core. She tells Katsuo to pull Kirin up, and she unleashes a devastating blow. Her weapon is about to break, but she continues to strike the midsection as Katsuo holds it in place. She manages to shatter the armor, revealing its core, but it suddenly fires an energy beam, breaking Asha's weapon and forcing them to retreat. They realize that it has gone berserk, but she suggests pressing the attack, saying they should defeat it because it might attack Rakuro. They know that if this happens, Rakuro is going to make fun of them, so they decide to take it down. It fires countless energy beams, but Asha manages to dodge them as she notes that she has 2 spears left, so they need to end the fight before she runs out of weapons. She lunges at Kirin, and she uses her skill to attack its shadow, preventing it from moving until her weapon breaks. She equips her last spear, preparing to unleash her most powerful attack, but she realizes that a missile is approaching her, and she ends up getting hit. Katsuo prepares to revive her, but he realizes that she's still alive, telling him that she only needs one arm to defeat Kirin. She launches her spear with all her might, and it hits the core with tremendous force, causing it to burst. Katsuo follows up, unleashing his ultimate move, as he delivers the finishing blow. Kirin crashes to the ground, and its body disintegrates, as Asha and Katsuo celebrate their victory, but they're worried about Rakuro, who has just consumed his last resurrection item. But his skills are almost ready, and he prepares to use a powerful combination to counter the Tomb Guard's ultimate skill. He changes his helmet as he tells the Tomb Guard that the fight is about to end. He dodges the chain of attacks, and he combines his moon blades, turning it into the Twin Moon, which significantly increases his stats. He prepares to use Climax Boost, but he realizes that he can't activate it because his health is too high. So he freaks out, realizing that he messed up, and the Tomb Guard is about to strike him down, but a dagger suddenly hits him as he realizes that Setsuna is watching. Rakuro uses the opportunity to stab himself, knowing he won't die, because with the recent update, the Endure status has been introduced. It activates for players with high luck, who are about to get killed by self-inflicted damage, allowing them to survive with 1 health. Rakuro activates his climax boost, and he unleashes a powerful aura as he manages to surpass the Tomb Guard's stats. The Tomb Guard uses his ultimate skill, but he counters with everything he has. Their powers clash, creating a shockwave, but he manages to overpower the Tomb Guard, shattering his armor and destroying his sword. Rakuro acknowledges his strength, saying he was only able to win because of sheer persistence, and the Tomb Guard admits defeat, telling Rakuro that he's incredibly talented. The Tomb Guard takes his sword, and he walks past Rakuro as he approaches Setsuna's grave. He mentions that his body is failing, so he wants to enjoy his final moment with her as he withers away, joining her in the afterlife. The area returns to normal, and Setsuna appears before the party, thanking them for completing the quest. But she reveals that she isn't the real Setsuna, saying she's just a remnant of the past, which was produced by Setsuna's dying wish to put the Tomb Guard's soul to rest. She tells them that she's about to disappear because her role has been fulfilled, and she mentions that they're the descendants of the second plan, saying it's their destiny to open the world. She advises them to look for Bahamut if they want to learn the truth, and Rakuro recognizes it as a giant fish which is treated as a dragon. But Asha knows that it doesn't exist in the game, so she wonders what Setsuna means, but she tells them that they will discover the answer, bidding them farewell as she finally disappears. Asha starts crying, but her friends tease her, saying they didn't know she had a soul, so she becomes upset, threatening to kill them. But at that moment, they receive a notification, telling them that they have completed the unique scenario, and Asha thanks them for helping her. Rakuro knows that this is the first time a unique monster has been defeated, so they're excited to see the rewards. But as they're about to check their loot, they hear an announcement informing everyone that Rakuro's party was able to defeat the Tomb Guard, so the world story has made progress. At the Royal Library, we see a group of players looking into the game's lore as they look for the professor, thinking everything is going to change. They don't know anything about the world story, but they think SLF is going to enter a new stage, revealing that they've never heard of the Tomb Guard, so they plan to look into him. They prepare to contact Rakuro's party, but they suddenly receive a message from the professor's wife, who is revealed to be in the Schwarz-Wolf clan, telling them that the professor is about to go online. Meanwhile, we meet the rest of the Schwarz-Wolf clan as Ray's sister, Siger 100, leads the meeting, wondering how the unique monster was defeated. They look into Rakuro's party as they realize that Asha used them because she betrayed the Ashurakai so that she can fight the Tomb Guard, thinking she's an even greater threat than Orsalot. Siger has never heard of Katsu, but she knows that Rakuro fought the Night Slayer. We learn that they're planning to journey to the new land, but she decides to stay there as she looks into Rakuro, thinking he's an interesting player, so she wants to meet him. But they realize that Ray is missing, and one of them mentions that she left to help a friend. We cut to Rakuro as his party meets Orsalot, who is upset because Asha betrayed the Ashurakai. But she calls him a loser, telling him that he's about to get what he deserves because he's a terrible leader. He prepares to attack them, but a sigil suddenly appears as Asha explains that a feature called Distress Signal has been introduced, allowing players to call for help. We learn that Rakuro summoned Ray, and Orsalot panics, knowing she just slaughtered his friends. He tries to fight her, but she easily defeats him, killing his friends, and Asha approaches him, delivering the finishing blow, as she tells him that he should stick to single-player games. They check his items, and Rakuro thanks Ray for helping them, but she tells him not to mention it, congratulating him for defeating the Tomb Guard. He realizes that everyone received the announcement, so he's worried that people will recognize him in public. Asha approaches Ray, revealing that she wants to die, but Katsu wonders if she's sure about this, knowing she's going to lose everything, because she's going to get punished for her crimes. But she explains that she doesn't care, saying she wants to clean her record, because she wants to stop killing players. She challenges Ray to a fight, knowing she has a fierce reputation as a player, so Asha wants to fight her with everything she has. Ray accepts the challenge as she unleashes her sword's power, releasing a dark energy, which causes her armor to turn black. She uses all of her buffs, saying she won't hold back, because Asha has a reputation for defeating the best players, and Asha uses Orsalot's sword, preparing to fight with her full power. She charges at Ray, using a skill to attack her from behind, but she manages to block it, covering Asha's sword with a dark energy, and she realizes that she can't move. Ray attacks her, shattering the ground, and we see that she lost her arm, but she manages to survive, saying she won't go down so easily as she tries to fight back. So Rei prepares to use her full power, surrounding her sword with a mysterious energy, which pushes Asha back, and she unleashes a devastating blow, creating a shockwave that completely covers the area. As the dust settles, Rei returns to her original form, and Asha is nowhere to be found, because her body has been completely destroyed. Rei takes her items, but Rikuro and Katsuo wonder what they should do next, because they don't know how to deal with her. Katsuo reminds Rikuro that she's his friend, but he explains that she's creepy, so he's trying to be careful. Katsuo thinks about fighting her, but she asks Rikuro about his relationship with Asha, so he tells her that they're gaming buddies, and she's happy to hear this, realizing they're just friends. She's about to be teleported away, as she explains that her timer has expired, and Rikuro thanks her for helping him, promising to pay her back. She's about to invite him to go out with her, but she suddenly disappears, and Rikuro realizes that Orcelot's sword has been left behind, so he decides to take it. We cut to Emil as Rikuro approaches her, telling her that he defeated the tomb guard. She's overjoyed to see him, and she starts crying, saying she was worried about him. But he tells her he's okay, and he returns the necklace, saying it helped him to win. Meanwhile, at the Utopia Company headquarters, we meet a man named Kyogi, as his subordinate tells him that everyone's in a state of shock because the tomb guard wasn't supposed to be defeated yet. He prepares to meet his colleagues, but he realizes that he's out of medicine, so he starts to panic, knowing he's having stomach problems. We meet the executive producer of SLF, Ritsu, as she tries to enter a room, but she becomes upset because the system keeps asking for her biometrics. The door opens, and she meets the founder of Utopia, Sukuri, telling her that the tomb guard has been defeated. They check Rikuro and his friends, as Ritsu mentions that they used the reward scales to defeat the tomb guard. Sukuri becomes angry, saying he was defeated because Ritsu nerfed his stats, but she explains that she did it because Sukuri made him too overpowered. They start arguing about the game's balance, as Sukuri explains that the tomb guard was supposed to be extremely powerful, and Kyogi arrives, telling them to stop fighting. But Ritsu suddenly hits him, forcing him to retreat. We learn that Sukuri designed the world, while Ritsu is in charge of balancing the game, but they're always fighting, because Sukuri wants to make the characters overpowered. That evening, Rei thinks about Rikuro, and she believes that her relationship with him is getting better, because he summoned her to his side. She thinks that Rikuro gave her presents, but Rikuro just gave her the items from the Ashurikai members, and she looks forward to seeing him in the real world. The next day, Rikuro logs into the game, and Emil tells him that Vash wants to see him. So he visits Vash, telling him that the tomb guard was a powerful opponent, and Rikuro notes that he would have lost if he didn't work on his reflexes. Vash thinks that the time has finally come, asking Rikuro if he wants to learn the truth about the world. He looks forward to hearing it, but Vash tells him to collect items first, and he receives a quest, telling him to find 3 items. But he's completely clueless, asking Vash where he can find them, so Vash tells him to look for a place called the Lightless Barrens. He checks his map, but Vash tells him that he can't find it there, saying he will discover it eventually, and Vash takes his leave. Rikuro checks his stats, and he's surprised to learn that he's already level 78, realizing that the tomb guard dropped an insane amount of EXP. He realizes that he has new skills, and he checks the battle loot, as he notes that he has obtained the Tome of Truth, which mentions the tomb guard's backstory, but he decides not to read it yet. He sees a skill book, which allows him to learn the tomb guard's skills, but he can't use them until he has acquired a divine equipment. He becomes excited, thinking the skill book is incredibly useful, but he knows that he needs to acquire a divine equipment, so he won't be able to use the skills anytime soon. He sees a special bracelet, which allows him to access a storage space, and it protects his items from being stolen. He thinks that it's like an item box, and he decides to try it, but he's teleported away, and he arrives in his storage, realizing that it's full of mysterious items. Asha visits Setsuna's grave, giving her flowers, as Asha reveals that she's broke, so that's all she can afford. She promises to return with something better, and she recalls Setsuna's words, as she told them that they will discover the truth after they find Bahamut. Asha reveals that she planned to quit SLF after defeating the tomb guard, but she decides to keep playing because she realizes that the game is full of mysteries. We see Katsuo in his room, and we learn that he has earned countless awards as a pro gamer. He thinks SLF is a great game, revealing that he was just planning to play it to kill time, but he doesn't want his friends to enjoy it without him. He thinks about practicing for his next contest, but he receives a message from Rikuro, telling him to check his inventory, because they received a special bracelet after defeating the Tomb Guard. So he decides to log in, and he meets his friends in a bar, where Rikuro tells them about the mysterious items in the storage area, thinking they look amazing. Asha reveals that she also saw them, but she thinks they aren't useful yet, explaining that they're tactical armors which require a power source to function. She explains that an ether reactor is required to activate them, but she doesn't know how to acquire it. But Katsuo reveals he already has an ether reactor, surprising everyone, as Asha wonders how he obtained it. He reveals that he acquired it after they defeated Kirin, but he mentions that it's damaged, saying he's been trying to get it repaired, but the blacksmiths don't even know what it is. Rikuro says he might have a solution, telling them that it's connected to a unique scenario, and he asks Katsuo if he can borrow the reactor. Katsuo agrees to this, but he tells Rikuro to explain how he unlocked the unique scenario. So he tells Katsuo that he isn't sure how he did it, but he thinks it's because of his encounter with the Night Slayer. He explains that he was less than level 20 when he fought against it, but he was able to survive for 5 minutes and landed 200 critical hits with a Vorpal weapon. But his friends become upset, because they think he's bragging, knowing they can't match his skills. Katsuo gives him the reactor anyway, and Asha asks Rikuro to return the items she gave him. We learn that she gave him the reward scales before they left the secret area, and Rikuro returns it to her, as she reveals that she just borrowed it from an organization called the Golden Scales. She explains that she didn't want to lose it, because she's going to use it to retrieve her items through a method known as laundering. She explains that she lost everything after she was killed, because Ray took her items, and the system punished her for killing players by selling everything in her storage to pay an exorbitant fee. Katsuo thinks she was able to protect the scale by giving it to Rikuro, but she explains that it doesn't work that way, because the system will search the player's history and sell the item. She reveals that the system didn't sell the reward scale, because she just borrowed it, saying ownership isn't transferred by giving someone an item, so it still belongs to the Golden Scales. Rikuro doesn't understand what she means by laundering, so she explains that she used the reward scale to hide her items, and she activates it, revealing that she was able to save the items she received from the Tomb Guard. They realize that they obtained different items after the fight, because Asha acquired a flower pin instead of a skill book. She explains that she offered her items to the reward scale, causing her to lose ownership over them, and she's able to retrieve them by sacrificing 40 levels to the scale. She adds that the Golden Scales still have her main weapon, because she used it as collateral to obtain the reward scales, so she can still retrieve it. Katsuo asks her about the penalty, so she tells him that it cost her 500 million, and she mentions that hunting unique monsters is profitable, thinking they should do it again. She thinks they should form a clan, and they play rock paper scissors, but Asha ends up losing, so they tell her that she's going to be the leader. She wants to play again, but they refuse, because nobody wants to be the leader. She realizes that she lost because of her reaction speed, thinking she isn't fit for the role, but Rikuro asks her what they should call the clan. Everyone makes a suggestion, and she decides to name the clan Wolfgang, saying their goal is to hunt unique monsters. They start drinking together, and they discuss the clan emblem, but at that moment, a man enters the room, saying he's searching for the party that defeated the Tomb Guard. He mentions their names, but they start running away, saying they have no idea what he's talking about. They discuss their plans, and Katsuo thinks about leveling up, while Asha considers returning the reward scales to retrieve her main weapon. They part ways, telling Rikuro to fix the reactor, and the man chases after him, but he enters an alley, where he meets Emil, telling her to open a gate to Rabbit Town. He recalls that he still has Orcelot's sword, thinking about giving it to Asha the next time they meet, and he enters the gate, as the man reaches the alley, but he realizes that Rikuro has disappeared. Rikuro enters Elka's store, where he merges his skills, and Elka asks him if he wants to buy her products, but he refuses, saying he's broke. He realizes that Vash isn't in the town, wondering who can fix the reactor, and he thinks Billick might be able to help him. So he shows it to Billick, but he reveals that only an ancient craftsman can fix it, saying he isn't at that level yet. So Rakuro thinks about putting the reactor aside and work on raising his new skills, but he suddenly comes up with an idea. He thinks about helping Bilik become an ancient craftsman, but he tells Rakuro that it's difficult to reach that level. Rakuro tells him that it's worth a try, saying he believes in Bilik's skills, and he's willing to do anything to help. So Bilik thinks about it, and he ultimately decides to do it, saying he will try to become an ancient craftsman. Emma wonders what kind of training Bilik will need to do, but Rakuro has no idea. But Bilik tells them there are 2 things needed to become an ancient craftsman. The first thing is a legacy weapon, and the second is a magic application unit, but Bilik warns that they won't be easy to find. Rakuro thinks about the legacy weapon, and he suddenly disappears into his storage space. He reappears with the Tomb Guard's sword, and Bilik can't believe he has a legacy weapon. Bilik gets excited, preparing to dismantle the sword, but Rakuro stops him, saying he needs to check with his friends, because they share ownership of the items in the storage. Bilik thinks they should find the magic application unit instead, and points out where it can be found. Rakuro looks at the map, and notes that it's quite far away, near the 11th town, but he also notices that the Lightless Barons are also near the town, and he recalls how he needs to go there to get the items for Vash's quest. He starts to get excited, but Bilik says he's also coming along. Rakuro wonders how he can travel around with 2 rabbits, but Bilik disguises himself as Rakuro's cloak. Before they head off, Rakuro sets his respawn point inside the Rabbit Palace. They need to get through an area called the Canyon of Ancient Souls, but it's covered by a miasma and filled with undead, so they stop by the 4th town first. They head to a shop, and Bilik notes it will be hard to deal with the miasma without a cleric or a holy item, so Rakuro picks up some holy water. They continue on their way, and they make it to the Canyon of Ancient Souls. As they walk, Bilik notices that Rakuro isn't affected by the miasma, so he reveals that the Nightslayer's mark nullifies all effects that are weaker. An undead wyvern suddenly appears, but upon seeing the markings on Rakuro's body, it quickly runs away. Bilik wonders if this is also an effect of his mark, so he mentions how any monster that's lower level than him will run away, and thanks to defeating the Tomb Guard, his level is now quite high. They have a relaxing walk through the area, but they soon come across a monster that doesn't run. Rakuro wonders if it can even see him since it's a headless horseman, but they prepare to fight it. Rakuro is excited to try out some of his new skills, and he starts fighting with the monster. He notes that even though it's higher level than him, he isn't threatened by it after having fought with the Tomb Guard. He thinks about making it dismount, so he uses his Vorpal Slash skill, which manages to knock it down. Bilik uses the holy water on his hammer, and he sends the horseman flying. Rakuro uses his skill to jump after it, but notices Bilik wanting to finish it off. The horseman tries to counterattack, but Rakuro dodges and activates his Ignite skill to boost his stats, and with his increased luck, he uses his Hand of Fortune to deal bonus damage, and he follows up by blasting it with Emel's magic. The monster falls, and Bilik delivers the finishing blow with his Titan's Blast. The horseman drops his sword, but Rakuro isn't impressed by it, thinking it's junk, but Bilik takes a look and thinks he could restore it. Rakuro notes how he forgot Bilik was a blacksmith, but when he checks his stats, he's surprised to see that Bilik is actually at level 98. They continue on to look for the boss, thinking the area is simple, but we see a creature that's watching them. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.